𝗪𝗡𝗀𝗀𝗡.
The Roman Catholic Church's, let's say, power mechanisms now. I'm always fascinated because if you go read some of the stories, and I have a book here on the Templars just sitting waiting for me to dive into it, that they had armies back in the day. And there's no army now per se, moving out in any sort of imperialistic way, but they definitely have power and they definitely have means of collecting resources from all over the world. How do you see the Vatican and the church's role within all of this, within the governments and within, being important to the people and determining where and what we go, what we do with resources? Where does the church fit in all this, especially as we go forward? What do you think is going to happen?
Oh, that's a great question, because the Vatican doesn't look like a geopolitical player in the modern era in the way it did, say, perhaps at the time of the Reformation, the European Reformation in the 1500s. But you're right, there's still plenty of power there, plenty of wealth, plenty of information that the Vatican has about human history, human identity, information about contact, information about hidden technology. And in that sense, it's not so dissimilar to the Pentagon with all the information and the wealth that they hold. The Pentagon is bankrolled by trillions of dollars of black budgets. And in a similar way, the Vatican is supplied with huge sums of money through property ownership all around the world. Both of them have hidden technology. So they're quite similar in a lot of ways. But there was something I was going to say that brought this home for me from the 1980s when I was traveling in Brazil. I was there to study the churches. There was phenomenal grassroots growth of communities of faith in the interior that were not controlled by priests, not controlled by hierarchy. People were finding each other, having powerful spiritual experiences, and then asking the question together, how do we organize our town differently? How do we achieve a better living standard for the people of our district? And I saw that the Vatican was very upset about this and was doing everything it could to stamp this out. And the workers that were going around encouraging this, bit by bit, I worked out they were all monks and nuns. And this blew me away because that wasn't how I thought of monks and nuns. These monks and nuns were like revolutionaries. And I thought, well, why is it them who are doing this work? And it was because there's a certain independence of the religious orders from the curia, from the hierarchy of the Roman Catholic Church. And so I understood that the hierarchy had agreements in place with secular powers, with regional, national governments, and they had agreements that they wouldn't allow their power to be destabilized by grassroots movements. So this is a profoundly anti-democratic energy coming from the top to keep those in power for whatever benefit that flows to the Vatican. I'm not quite sure, other than that a lot of these districts are Catholic districts. And so there is a flow of wealth still in the present from Catholic countries to the Vatican. And so I was quite young when I realized the Vatican is still involved in geopolitics. It is still involved in shoring up this government and undermining this movement. I saw it in real time in Brazil in the 1980s, and it's no different today than it was then.
I know this too, because I know Pope John Paul was a fascinating individual and very much involved when you start reading some, let's say, biographies and different things from different leaders around his time and their relationships with him and how important, why is he having a discussion on where Poland and what Poland should or shouldn't do and where he's, and you're thinking this is the Pope, but they have a different role. They have an important role. And you mentioned the Vatican Library. And I've always wanted to speculate on what is there. And you mentioned hidden tech. Could you speculate on what cool things they would have knowledge on, or what sort of tech they might even have?
What I'd particularly like to find in the vaults of the Vatican is all the good stuff that they got out of Central and South America from the Spanish and Portuguese invasions, because texts were sequestered at that time, And for the most part, they were burned. Whole libraries were destroyed, libraries which had carried the cultural memory of the Mayan people, because the Mayan society was a society with writing. They had libraries. They were burned. We have an idea of what some of those texts were because there was suddenly an interest around the world in technologies for remote viewing. And so Queen Elizabeth I wanted to get her hands on technology that would enable remote viewing in that time frame following those conquests. So I think that was a part of it. If you look at the artistic canon of Central and South America, then you've got not only remote viewing and remote hearing technology named, but you've got the suggestion of more powerful weaponry and other kinds of higher tech that any national power would want to have rather than their enemies have it. So I think the things we see portrayed in those carvings, which include space-going vehicles, flying vehicles, and then remote communication, I think we've got texts, and anything they found that was material, that was 3D, they would have sequestered to the vaults there. So I'd like to look for that. There are other parts of the world where the technology of portaling is named. So if we read Genesis 11 and read that alongside the Sumerian stories, the suggestion is that there were beings coming and going from ancient Iraq through Stargate technology and portal technology. Now that's a
where is this? Sorry,
this is in what today is Iraq. So any technology.
Where the text? There, sorry.
Say again.
Where is the source? Sorry to interrupt. Where is the source of this coming from? With the portal technology, for what could I read about it or hear about it?
Okay, Genesis 11, and read that alongside the 𝗛𝗎𝗓𝗓, which is a Sumerian text.